Okay, everybody, welcome to the section on theater history. This is meant to continue the section on theater history that we did in Theater Arts 1. Now, I know some of the people in this class weren't able to be in Theater Arts 1, or if you were, you had that section on theater history interrupted because of the pandemic. So I'm not going to go back in time and review all of that. But I will encourage you guys to go onto my YouTube channel and look at those videos so that you have an idea what we're talking about. They're not going to be tested on those, okay? But I do want you to be familiar with them so that you can understand what the next things we're talking about. I'm going to assume that you already have done that or remember at least dimly the theater history stuff we did from the ancient Greeks all the way up until William Shakespeare. Now, what happened after Shakespeare in England is, well, something political happened. Sometimes politics gets in the way of art, and that's what happened here. We had something that was called the Puritan Revolution. You see, what ended up happening is there is this guy. This guy's name was Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell was well, today we would call him a senator, basically. He was an elected official, part of Parliament. And he and his followers got into some disagreements with the king about various different things. And the king basically just told them to go pound sand. He said, I'm not going to do anything you tell me to do. And they revolted. And to everyone's surprise, they won. So suddenly we have the nation of England, the United Kingdom, we would call it today, now being ruled not by a king, but instead by a group of people that had a particular religious tradition called Puritanism. Now, this lasts from about 1640 to about 1660. Now, why is this important? Well, when the Puritans took control of England, oh yeah, that's important too. They killed the king. They killed King Charles I. Had his head cut off in a public square. And then they took control of England, and they outlawed all theater in England. Now, why did they do that? Well, because the Puritans didn't like theater. They didn't like a lot of things. The Puritans would not be much fun at a party. They believed that a lot of things we would consider to be fun, they considered to be sinful. So they outlawed theater, they outlawed dancing, they outlawed certain kinds of music, the wearing of certain colors. There's a lot of things that they kind of made laws against them because they believed that they would try to, by laws, create a morality that they believed in. And the really astonishing thing is that for 20 years, people went along with it. A lot of it was because of this guy. This guy, Oliver Cromwell, was an extremely good leader. Now, oh, that's right. Why do they outlaw theater? This is actually something I find is interesting. The reason why they outlawed all of those things is that they considered all of those to be too Catholic. You remember, if you go back to the medieval period, we talked about that the Catholic Church used theater as a way to teach about the gospel. Well, the Puritans said that that's wrong. That's wrong to try to use like anything besides just talking out of the Bible to teach people about the gospel. They said it's a corruption. And they considered pretty much anything bad, they considered that to be the Catholic Church's fault. That's why they called themselves the Puritans. They considered that their job was to purify Christianity of all the garbage that was made by the Catholic Church and by other people. Now, I find that a little bit ironic myself, because if you remember from the medieval period, or if I should say between the Romans and the medieval period, was another period of time where there wasn't any theater for a long time, a lot longer, in fact, several hundred years. And in that period of time, why was there no theater? Well, because the Catholic Church didn't like theater at that point. And they believed that theater was too pagan. It wasn't Catholic or Christian enough. But whatever, for 20 years, the Puritans outlawed theater, and they basically told people, you can't have these different things because they're bad for you and they're evil, and so they didn't like them. And that continued for about 20 years until this guy, Oliver Cromwell, died. Now, when he died, his son tried to continue on the tradition, but he wasn't nearly as talented of a leader as Oliver Cromwell was. And so we ended up having instead what was called the Restoration. They called it the Restoration because they restored the king, the monarchy. They brought the king back, basically. So this restoration period lasts for about 50 years, 1660 to 1710. What happened is there's another revolution, not nearly as bloody, but there's another revolution that kicked out the Puritans so that they could no longer be ruling England like that. And they called to King Charles II. This was the son of the guy whose head they cut off. He was living in France for all this time, and they restored him to the throne. Now, think for a second if you're Charles II. First of all, you grew up as a little kid believing you were going to be a king someday. And then along come these Puritans that kill your father and make you have to live in France for 20 years in exile. Then people call you and say, come on back and be our king. Now, obviously, King Charles II did not like Puritans. I'm sure he would have loved to be able to have laws that said Puritans are all going to be kicked out of our country. He couldn't do that. One thing he had learned in the Civil War that they had is that the king didn't have the power to tell Parliament what to do. So there were still plenty of powerful Puritans out there. He couldn't just outlaw their religion. What he could do was make things uncomfortable for them. So he overturned those laws about saying that there is no theater, no music, and some of that, which, by the way, that was very popular. Lots of people were sick of that by then. But he also encouraged people to make art that would be uncomfortable to the Puritans. And the artists could tell which way the wind was blowing. And so they deliberately, theater was made in reaction to those strict taboos of the Puritans. Anything the Puritans were considered to be offensive, they would make a lot of it because they wanted to offend Puritan sensibilities. So, 3 things I want you to notice in Restoration comedy. First of all, we have sexually explicit material. Now, I'm not talking about pornography. It really wasn't a lot of pornography. This is still, almost 300 years ago, and more than 300 years ago. And so, yeah, the idea of pornography on the stage being an okay thing was not something they allowed. What they did have is a lot of dirty jokes. Basically, the stories all turned around the idea of sex and people having sex with people and stuff. And so there was a lot of that sort of thing. Puritans did not like that. Secondly, they had topical plots. One thing Puritans didn't like about theater in particular is that theater would attack people in power. And they thought this was inappropriate to have people who weren't elected officials or anything being able to be able to speak out loud and criticize. And so they didn't like that. Well, along comes Restoration comedy. They said, okay, then we're going to have topical plots. These plots directly reflected the current times. Most Restoration comedy takes place in those years between 1660 and 1710. We don't have a lot of stuff from like stories from the past, like Shakespeare would do. And the third one, and this is the big one. This is the big one, the change that really stuck. Female actors. Remember, in Shakespeare's day, women were not allowed on stage. Puritans had very strict ideas about what women should be allowed to do. And having a job was not one of the things they felt that women should do. The idea of a woman being up on stage, acting, pretending to be something she's not, and getting paid for it would make a Puritan howl. So, of course, they did it. Now, for Charles II, this was no big deal at all. France had had female actors for hundreds of years. So we get that in there, and we have women actors on the stage. The first time they were there in England, anyway, it was intentionally to try to tick off Puritans. And guess what happened? Nothing. The world didn't explode. Women didn't become immoral monsters. Okay? And as a result, we never go back again to only men on stage. It's just not something that happens anymore. until we get to the point today where I generally have a lot more women than I have men in my drama club. Anyway, so the purpose of theater in the Restoration comedy is entertainment. Now you're going to notice from here on out, entertainment is almost always the purpose. You remember in Theater Arts 1, we talked about it went back and forth between entertainment, education, entertainment, education. Here, it becomes for entertainment was the main purpose for it. But a lot of the times you'll see that it's entertainment and also this. So that's the and also this is what I want you to pay attention to. So they believe that the purpose of theater was entertainment, but also to make fun of Puritans, to try to find people that think they're all high and mighty and good and holy and make fun of them. And guys, that today is still what some people believe the purpose of theater is to find people that that no one is questioning, people that ideas that everyone thinks shouldn't be made fun of, and make fun of them. This is why we end up with things like South Park or Avenue Q or a lot of other plays like that that deliberately try to find things that are good and holy and make fun of them. Now, the actors in this time period are professionals, and they are both men and women. Professionals, they're getting paid to be actors. And for the first time, they also became celebrities. Now, again, this is a bit of a big deal because in Shakespeare's day, an actor was kind of considered the scum of the earth. But now, suddenly, actors were important. They were celebrities. Now, a lot of times they were kind of bad boys, but in the Restoration time, that was considered a good thing. So actors became more of a big deal than they used to be. Now we're going to talk about some of the important writers and plays, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to act out some of these. I'm not going to act them out by myself. I'm going to use some action figures and some stuffed animals and stuff like that. If you were watching my videos on YouTube, you've seen that I already did that through a lot of those plays. I might not act out these ones all the way. I am certainly not going to give you all the details of them, all right? Especially these ones, because like I said, they are sexually explicit plays. But the first one I want you to talk about is a guy named William Wycherley and a play that he made called The Country Wife.
All right, this is the story of The Country Wife. Now, the first thing before I get started, I want to make sure you understand, is that The Country Wife, like most Restoration comedies, is not one plot. It's a lot of different interweaving plots that really only all come together near the end. All right? I am not going to give you all of the different plots from A Country Wife. But I'm going to give you the ones that I feel like are important, the ones I want you guys to know about for tests and whatnot, and it'll be enough to go on with. So the main plot centers around this guy. This guy's name is Harry Horner. In the play, he's mostly called by his last name, Horner. That's on purpose. That has a meaning. Okay? Now, Horner is what is called a rake. What that means, today we would say he's a playa. He likes having sex with lots of different women. In fact, what he really likes is having sex with other men's wives and daughters without them knowing about it. Okay? So yeah, that's pretty creepy, really, in real life. But in the world of this play, he's just kind of this playful character, and apparently he's quite good at having sex with people because the women never complain. In fact, they usually help keep his secret. As for the guys in the town, well, actually, mostly they're okay with it too. They say, "Oh, Harry, oh, Horner, you're such a rake. We just can't trust you. You're just so crazy and stuff like that. I can't believe what you like. Stay away from my wife, though. Stay away from my daughter." And what Horner starts to realize is that since all the guys in the town know about this, they're all protecting their women from him. So he comes up with an idea so that they will put their guard down. What he does is he goes and gets a doctor that's kind of a friend of his, and he has the doctor swear out a prescription for him and so that makes him look like he has become impotent. If you don't know what that word means, today we would say that he has erectile dysfunction, that he cannot have sex, that his penis won't stand up, he cannot have sex. Now, this isn't true. but he creates this rumor about himself and spreads it around the entire town, such that now all the people in the town, they hear about it, and the guys will come up and say, "Oh, Horner, I heard some terrible news." And no, it's not true. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. "Oh, I'm sorry. I know this is real important to you. Oh, it's not embarrassing. I don't want to talk about it. Oh, it's okay. It'll all turn out all right. But at least now I know you're safe, so I can leave you alone with my wife without being afraid of it." Which is, of course, his plan the whole time. And throughout the play, he's continually having sex with people's wives and daughters without them knowing about it. Now, no, this doesn't happen on stage. In fact, usually what happens is it'll be off stage. You know, the husband will be here talking with somebody else, something like that, and the wife and Horner will say something effective like, "I'd like to show you my china cabinet in the other room." "Okay, sure." And they go to the other room, and you hear them very loudly talking about their china cabinets, and these two are on stage, and they don't know what's going on, but the audience does. And there's a lot of that going on. So that's one of the main plots. Hang on to that, Harry Horner, in your mind. Now, the other plot has to do with this guy. This guy's name is Mr. Pinchwife. Yeah, I know, a lot of the names are kind of silly. Like I said, a lot of the names have a meaning. So Mr. Pinchwife had a wife that has died. And it isn't until she died that he finds out that she was a tramp, and she was actually sleeping with a lot of other men that he didn't know about. Everyone else in the town knew about this, but not him. So he's very, very embarrassed by this. So he decides, I am not going to make the same mistake with my second wife. He's going to get remarried. He's decided he's going to go out into the country and find a good, clean, innocent country wife. And so he brings home this innocent country wife. Her name is Marjorie. And at first it seems that she may be innocent. But after a while of being around the town, she starts noticing all the handsome men around, and suddenly she becomes not very innocent. In fact, she becomes very sexually aggressive. Almost like Horner, except for as a woman. So, by the way, Pinchwife is still pretty darn ignorant about this. A lot of the times, in fact, he ends up, part of the joke of it is that, like, he tries to give her good advice to keep her from getting into trouble, and he ends up giving her the information that she needs in order to go and cheat on him and so that. By the way, people usually ask, do these guys end up together? Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do, a couple. It's kind of a funny scene because he's trying to seduce her and she's kind of trying to seduce him in the same breath, and it's kind of a funny, silly scene. Yeah, that's, in fact, the title of the play has to do with this, The Country Wife, which is a dirty joke. I'm not making it up either. It was part of what Wycherley's dialogue makes points about her being a country wife and that being a dirty joke. And I am not going to say on tape what that dirty joke is. If we talk during class, I might try to explain it to you, but I'm not going to say it on tape. It's dirty. In any case, though, it all comes to a head in a scene at the end. Horner, as I said, has been sleeping with lots of different women all over the town, including with Marjorie. But Marjorie's also heard the rumors. The rumors about him being impotent and not able to have sex, and also part of the rumors say that his male member has been increasingly made small because of his disease. She doesn't like the fact that she knows this stuff isn't true, and so she kind of wants to destroy the bad rumors about him. And there's a dinner party with a whole bunch of women in the town. They're all together, and they're all talking about the fact that they all have a secret lover and stuff like that. And then it comes out that they all have the same secret lover. They are all sleeping with Harry Horner. Now, Wycherley knows his audience. He knows that what we expect to have happen is that all these women are going to say, well, we will get revenge, and then Horner will be punished. Because he knows the audience is expecting for Horner to be punished at the end. Instead, what happens is this. One of the women stands up and says, all right, ladies, you know what we all have to do. Yes, we know what we have to do. Yes, we need to keep this a secret forever. Because if everybody knows that Horner is not impotent, he will ruin all of our reputation. So we need to all promise that we will keep this secret forever. And so they all make the promise. And one of them says, oh, and we need to all promise also to stop sleeping with Harry Horner. And all the women say, yeah, sure. We all promise that. And they are all lying. And that's pretty much how the play ends. Horner gets away with it. He's never caught, he's never punished, and the suggestion is he's going to keep on having sex with these women until he falls into his coffin. And that's the end of the play.
So that's The Country Wife. And the important thing to know about The Country Wife is that it was really quite groundbreaking. Wycherley, even though it was really a dirty play, and a lot of people, once we get out of the Restoration period, people got kind of embarrassed by this kind of play, and we don't see it for a long, long time. But it was really considered to be a really masterful piece. It's very well written, if you can get around the fact that it is kind of a dirty play. The title itself is a dirty joke, yeah, I'm not going to explain it in a video. I might explain it if we were talking about it in class. In any case, though, that's The Country Wife and William Wycherley. Now let me talk about another one. There's one other writer from Restoration period that I want to talk about, and that person's name is Aphra Behn. Now, before I talk about the play that Aphra Behn wrote, the first thing I want you to know about Aphra Behn is that Aphra Behn is a woman. Aphra Behn was the first professional female playwright. So Aphra Behn, even before she writes a word, before you see a single piece of her art on the stage, she's already annoying Puritans because she is a woman making a living, being paid to work in the theater and to write and get her own ideas out on the stage. That is probably the biggest thing that Aphra Behn did, is standing there and saying, here I am, I'm a woman, I'm getting paid to write books, paid to write plays even. So now let's talk about the play that she wrote, because if we take a look at the Rover, the Rover, like The Country Wife, has a bunch of different plots, and I'm not going to hit them all. I'm going to talk about one particular plot in the Rover, though, that would really have ticked off Puritans.
So even more than The Country Wife, The Rover is a lot of different plots altogether. I mean, The Country Wife has like 3 different plots. The Rover has about 9. It's just a lot of different plots altogether. I am not going to hit all of them. A lot of them are about sex and about prostitution and about lots of different things. But the one I want to focus on is the one that I think is the most groundbreaking, which is about Helena. So Helena's a woman in this time period, and what that means as a woman is that Helena does not have any power over who she gets to marry. This was actually the case up until about 150 years ago or so, is that women, unless they were independently wealthy, did not have the ability to control their own bodies and who they're going to get married to. She has a brother who has decided that she is going to get married to nobody. She is going to be sent off to a convent to be a nun. Now, she doesn't want to be a nun, but she has no choice in the matter. And so he's decided that he is going to send her off there to be a nun. And Helena decides that, well, since I have no choice in the matter, I need to go off and be a nun and never have sex with anybody. You know what? I want to know what I'm going to be missing. So she decides that her and her friend are going to go off together and on purpose go out one night and have her a love affair. At this point, the brains of Puritans start to explode. Because Aphra Behn is writing the idea of this being a woman that not only is going to be having sex with people, but isn't even being seduced into doing it. She is deciding in sober mind to go and have love affairs. Because to Puritans, they believe that women are pure holy folk, and the only reason that they do naughty things is if nasty, mean guys trick them into it. Now, the play deals with that a little bit too. The guy that she ends up finding is a man named Wilhelm. Wilhelm is a captain. He's like a sailor, basically, and he has different women in lots of different ports. In fact, a lot of these plots I'm talking about having to do with prostitution have to do with Wilhelm, who spends way too much time with prostitution and other things like this. Now, Helena looks at him, though, and says, okay, this guy's perfect. Clearly, he knows how to make love, he knows what he's doing in the bedroom, and he won't feel any disappointment when he discovers that we can't get married because I have to go become a nun after this. And so they start having love affair, and it's kind of a neat little scene because he kind of feels like he is the Rover. He's the one that the title comes from. Rover meaning wanderer, meaning a person that goes from place to place to place, and he finds a different girl in all these different places. And many of these girls have a predictable thing with like, oh, but Wilhelm, I thought that you loved me. He's like, no, you know, you should have known the better. You should have known it was just something we're just playing around and nothing is important going to happen. But I thought this meant something to you. Yeah, well, too bad. So that's been his life. Now, when Helena comes into him, he thinks he's seducing her. She's basically letting him think so. And they start having a little love affair, sort of thing. All this takes place over the course of like a day or two, by the way. Now, other things happen, and so I'm going to drop off of their story for a little bit as other things happen. But eventually what ends up happening is that the brother, long story short, he decides against making his sister become a nun, partly because he feels like keeping track of her virtue is too much trouble, and he'd rather go ahead and let her get married or whatever. So she is suddenly free to be able to get herself married to somebody. Now, when Wilhelm finds out about this, he's like basically saying, well, okay, now I bet you want to get married and stuff, but you should have known better because, of course, I don't want anything to do with you. It was just for fun and stuff like that. And she says, well, yeah, I knew that. You kidding me? Now that I have a choice to get married to whoever I want, you think I'm going to marry you? Here, look at you. Who are you? You got nothing. You got nothing. All you are is some kind of soldier, some kind of captain. You kidding me? No, this was just for fun. This wasn't anything it didn't mean anything. And then he's like, but I thought you loved me. I thought it meant something. It's kind of funny because it's like suddenly role reversal. The same things that the women were saying to him, he's now saying to her. Now, we do still live in the world where a happy ending means they end up together, and they do end up together. But it's a nice little reversal because suddenly he needs to try to prove to her that he's going to be faithful to her. And she makes him really pay for it and try to like really prove that he's going to be faithful. And at the end, she does accept that, and they do end up getting married, and that's the happy ending for them. But it's a neat little role reversal because what Alfred is saying is that, you know what? Women have every bit as much chance to be sexual and to desire to have sex that men have, and they have just as much chance of being rakes. And they have they're human beings. They're not like animals that you can just decide what they are doing based on them being women. Which again, all of which is pretty despicable to the Puritans, which is who she was targeting. Now, this play today is, like I said, there's a lot of other scenes that are not considered all that great, but a lot of people look at this play, and especially this scene, this plot line with Helena, as being kind of women's Libby. Because Helena's an independent woman that has a mind of her own, which is in a world where she's not really expected to have her own mind of her own, and she has a mind of her own that pushes her towards having her own sexual independence, which is a kind of big deal, especially for the time. Anyway, lots of other stories in there. I'm only giving, like I'm told you, I'm only giving you like a little bit of the story of the Rover, but that's the part that I want you to know about. That's the Rover by Afra.
Okay, so that's the Rover. And like I said, Afra was the first professional female playwright, so that's another important thing to know. Now, we're going to go on to talk about the next era next time, but I wanted to take a minute and point out something about the Restoration. After the Restoration kind of ended, people got a little embarrassed by them because for about 50 years, we were making these plays, or England, I should say, was making these plays that were really kind of dirty. And for about 250 years or so, these plays aren't done anymore. They're kind of embarrassed by them, and they really stopped. They don't do these plays anymore. Until round about the 1970s, suddenly these plays start showing up again. And we start seeing them on stage and even in college classes and stuff like this. And people start studying this stuff and putting these plays on. Now, what changed? Well, some people look at the 1970s and they look at the kind of permissiveness that happened there, and they say, yeah, this is a bad thing. This shows that we're kind of going down that same path of like rejoicing in kind of dirty stuff. And they say this shows that we're falling as a society. Our society is kind of becoming crass, becoming rude and uncouth. Other people look at them and say, no, this is wonderful. First of all, we're celebrating a piece of our history, a piece of theater history and stuff like that. And secondly, we are celebrating these same things, this kind of like a puncturing of moralities and sexually explicit stuff, and the women's power. A lot of this is about women's power. And so a lot of this, look at these and say these are good plays, and there's a good reason for us to bring them back. So I'm curious what you think. So in the discussion down below, I want you to tell me what you think. The fact that these plays were not on stage for 250 years, and then now in your lifetime, they're coming back and being celebrated again. Is that a good thing, or is that a bad thing? Tell me what you think. And don't just say good, bad. Tell me what you think and tell me why you think it. And then if you want to respond to other people's ideas, I would love to make that into a conversation.